I'm Mark Seifter.
And I'm Linda Zeiss Palmer.
And this is Arcane Mark Class Chat. Gunslinger!
Shooting lightning.
Hey, in Arcadia, we shoot lightning.
We'll get there.
Okay. So, this is Gunslinger, the very last class that we'll ever do a class chat for until at least Gen Con of 2022, which is over half a year from now, so it'll be a while. Class chat fans who only watch our channel for class chat, we'll see you then.
Yes.
For everyone else, and also those people who only do that, let's talk about the Gunslinger. So,
the Gunslinger's deal. While some fear projectile weapons, you savor the searing flash, wild kick, and cloying smoke that accompanies a gunshot, or snap of the cable and telltale thunk of your crossbow just before your bolt finds purchase. Ready to draw a bead on an enemy at every turn, you rely on your reflexes, steady hand, and knowledge of your weapons to riddle your foes with holes. So if you are a gunslinger, your key ability is dexterity. You've got pretty typical hit points at 8+ con. You are an expert in perception. I mean, you got to know where to shoot. And you're also expert in fortitude and reflex. You're hardy and good at dodging things, but just trained in will. You're going to be trained in one or more skills determined by your gunslinger's way, which we'll get into more, but you can probably guess is the path choice for the class. You're also going to be, and a few more skills, 3+ your int modifier. You're going to be expert in simple firearms and crossbows.
that's very important.
Yes. And as well as in martial firearms and crossbows.
That's also very important.
And you're going to be trained in advanced firearms and crossbows. Is that also very important?
I mean, that's kind of important, but those first two were very important.
Yes, for sure. As well as trained in simple and martial weapons and unarmed attacks. You can use everything. And for defenses, you are trained in light and medium armor as well as unarmored defense. So again, you've got a lot of flexibility there. And of course, you're trained in your class DC. If you are a gunslinger, then during combat, you strike from range with your firearm, seeking to defeat your opponents before they can pose a true threat. Depending on your choice of weapon, you might prefer to strike your opponent from a hidden position before they ever realize you're there, dash through a frenzied melee with pistols blazing, or glide effortlessly across the battlefield, waiting for the perfect moment to end the conflict with a single well-placed shot. During social encounters, you have a keen eye and can see things coming from farther than most. You might not be the life of the party, but your companions know to pay attention when your subtle or concerned grunt indicates that something is amiss. While exploring, you scout the group's position for incoming threats and help search for secret doors and hidden passages, keeping a weather eye out for unexpected threats. In downtime, you might craft ammunition or keep your complex weapons clean and maintained, and you might look for work that matches your unique talents, such as working as a blacksmith, engineer, or part of a local watch. You might wander from town to town or stay put for a spell to enjoy the silence that lingers between gunfights. You might, in general, seek out areas of great conflict where your unique choice of weaponry can help build your reputation. Explore new horizons, trusting your honed senses and deadly weapon to keep you safe. Demonstrate extensive knowledge about various types of guns and ammunition, along with curiosity about the latest gun technology. Others probably assume that since you know how your gun works, you must understand how to resolve all other mechanical challenges.
Of course.
They might underestimate you at first glance, thinking you rely on your gun because you lack other skills. Or they might respect your eternal vigilance, unyielding grit, and excellent aim.
And if life gives you a gun, then all problems look like things you could shoot with a gun.
Like the Inventor class, the Gunslinger is an uncommon class, in part because,
sure is.
You know, not every GM and every campaign are going to want to have firearms in with sort of the rest of the fantasy story.
And in Golarion, guns aren't everywhere either. It's worth noting, since we always talk about who designed each class, that Michael Sayer has designed the Gunslinger. It is his first class that he designed as a designer at Paizo. So, that's very cool. And when we get into that next book, Dark Archive, we'll see James Case's first class as well. And then everyone will have a class. You get a class!
And you get a class!
It's under your chair! So yeah, it's an uncommon class. You get all the things that everybody gets.
ancestry and background of the proficiency it says on the first page. But then you get your Gunslinger's Way, which is a combination of a philosophy and a combat style. Your way is going to grant you an initial deed. It's also going to grant you so it's a unique reload action called a Slinger's Reload, and proficiency with a particular skill. And as you level up, you're going to gain greater deeds, and there's some feats specific to particular ways that you're able to take based on which way you pick. So there are 4 ways that are presented in this book, but there may possibly be others coming out in the future. I don't specifically know. I haven't seen what comes after this, but certainly
it's a guess that Linda's making.
There is space open
about whether there might be additional ways. Well, I cannot make that guess.
Yes, well, it just says the following ways are presented in this book, so it implies that you could have others. There's the Way of the Drifter. You wander across the battlefield, equally at home in and out of the fray. The Way of the Pistolero. You carefully maintain your distance at a duelist 10 paces with pistol in hand. The Way of the Sniper, you practice a methodical style of shooting, striking from far cover. Or the Way of the Vanguard. Rely on brutal combat style that uses heavy weapons and explosive attacks. So these styles are going to differ in sort of what kinds of weapons you use, what kinds of range you use, how mobile you are versus sniping from behind cover. There's a lot of different ways to be a gunslinger.
Singular Expertise is an ability that gives you you're really focused in firearms and crossbows. You get 1 extra damage with them, but when we say that you're an expert in them, and then master and then legendary in them, we really mean just them. And if you see an archetype that's like, well, whatever your high proficiency in your weapons is, add, great swords onto that, then no, you do not add your firearm proficiency to great swords. You are still limited to the one that's below what you have with guns. That is basically Singular Expertise in a nutshell. Then you get a bunch of other stuff that everyone gets, like skill feats.
The general feats. The skill increases.
And then you are very stubborn.
Yes. At 3rd level, your proficiency rank for will saves bumps up to expert, and you get that thing where if you fail, but don't critically fail a will save against something that would cause you to become controlled, then you can try to save again at the beginning of your next turn.
Yep, where you're just like, I'm too stubborn for this. Then you get a bunch of other things you always get, like ability boosts and ancestry feats, and then there's Gunslinger Weapon Mastery, that's Master in firearms and crossbows at level 5. Vigilant Senses gives you Master in Perception at level 7, which is a very fast time to get it. Weapon Specialization, like most martial classes, at 7.
At 9th level, you get that Advanced Deed we mentioned before from your Gunslinger's Way.
And Gunslinger Expertise, so you can get Expert in your Gunslinger class DC, which is a pretty good time to get that.
Evasion at level 11.
Master in Reflex.
And at 13th, you get Gunslinging Legend. Your proficiency rank with simple and martial firearms and crossbows increases to Legendary! At 13th level, yes.
Yes, it does. And there's a typo about your other stuff increasing to Expert when it really increases to Master. Whoops. It's already Expert. You get Medium Armor Expertise at level 13 as well. And so it's a very, very good level because your offense and your defense both go up. 15th, you're going to see a really cool Greater Deed, some more damage with Greater Weapon Specialization. Then at 17th, you pick up Master in Fortitude with Juggernaut, and Shootist Edge, which gives you Master Gunslinger Class DC, and you can ignore the penalty for attacking in the 2nd and 3rd range increments of your weapon. So it's just like, yeah, I shoot you pretty far away. Like, really, really far away compared to most people with no penalty. 19th level is going to give you Legendary Perception and Mastery in Medium Armor.
Before we continue, there are some key terms that were back in a sidebar on the previous page.
We better go through those.
Flourish, the familiar one, the actions that you can only use 1 flourish action per turn. But then there's a new one here, Misfire.
Misfire is a very important one.
It's about maintaining your. It's important for you to maintain your weapons. If you have not, if you haven't, and if you don't, then you might have to roll a flat check to see if the weapon misfires.
Oh no, but there's certain abilities, because you're probably going to maintain your weapons, that are specifically gambling with just how quickly you're throwing all the black powder in there, And those are much more likely to misfire, but otherwise you'll never misfire unless you either intentionally don't clean it or like somehow get locked in a jail cell and can't clean it or something, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And you find your weapons and pick them up after a few days, and it's like, oh, but I
you
haven't
drop it
cleaned
into a swamp.
Yep, or you use a really risky ability on purpose because it's awesome, and you don't mind if it misfires because it's awesome. And we're going to see some of those later on. So that is misfire. Is there anything else in those key terms? I think not.
No.
Like flourish, we know is going to be you use 1 flourish in total per turn. All right. So what about those gunslinger ways?
Yeah.
Linda?
Before that, there's another little sidebar here on interacting to reload.
Okay.
So
what about interacting to reload?
Let's see. Talks about a lot of things giving the ability to interact to reload a weapon.
And that's the interact action you use to reload, which is one of the interact actions you use to reload something that requires more than one.
I see. So it's basically being like, no, this doesn't mean that you can load a siege weapon in a single action.
Right. Because
fair enough.
It's like almost 99.5% obvious, but some people are like, well, even though it says in reload that you use interact actions to do it, when you say you can interact to reload, we assume that means it does 92 interact actions if the weapon requires 92 because it says to reload. That means it fully reloads it. Which it definitely doesn't, but it's better to be unambiguous.
Fair enough. All right.
Gunslinger ways.
Starting with the way of the drifter. A wanderer traveling from land to land with your guns and a melee weapon as company. Maybe you're a shackles pirate who fights with blade and pistol. Or maybe you master the hand cannon and katana and minkai, or practice with a hatchet and clan pistol and dong and hold. You win battles by relying on mobility and flexible use of your weapons.
So you get acrobatics as your skill. You're going to do a reloading strike where you're like, I'm reloading, but I'm also hitting you with my axe or katana or whatever. And then you've got
your initial deed into the fray, free action when you roll initiative. You know trouble can lurk around any corner, and your hands never stray far from their holsters. You can interact to draw a one-handed ranged weapon, and can then interact to draw a one-handed melee weapon.
And at the start of your first turn, you can even stride as a free action. Very, very handy. Also, the reloading strike ability is really neat, because when you're reloading, you're making a melee attack. And it's not like at a penalty, you just get the melee attack. That is one of the advantages of having the ability that Gunslinger does, singular focus, because there's no way that just reload weapons are going to let the reloading be replaced with like free weapon attacks if they are like just completely full weapon attacks. But since Gunslinger definitionally does not have its full proficiency bonus on that attack with the melee weapon, then it all works out. And so it winds up giving you just like, it's like, okay, all of your reloads are actually a free strike.
Yes.
It's not with the weapon that you have a super ridiculous bonus with, but it is with a weapon that you have the same bonus as a barbarian or a ranger or like anybody other than a fighter or a gunslinger. So
and as for Into the Fray, it's also called Into the Fray, not Run Away. So you can't use that stride to be like, it's a combat, I'm going to promptly run away. You only get that free stride if you're moving closer to your foe.
You have to move towards them. So then the advanced deed finish the job is a one action where you missed but did not critically fail with a firearm or crossbow. So then you're like, oh yeah? Melee attack! Except for that you don't take additional multiple attack penalty for the gunshot that missed.
Yes.
So, it's like, you do have a lower proficiency modifier. It's another situation where it's like, we probably wouldn't do this if it was with something that was all at your same bonus, then you just, I just ignore multiple attack penalty, who cares? But in this case, it's like, we need to finish them off. We're not going to do the melee reload thing, because that's less accurate. I just want to make sure I hit. I'll just attack again at the same bonus, but just with not as high of a proficiency because it's my gun. And then Drifter's Wake, which is a super cool 15th level 3 action where you just stride across the battlefield in 3 attacks at any time during your movement against different enemies using your firearms and your melee weapons. And since you don't get like a million free reloads, assuming that your weapon is not one that like has a capacity, that's probably like 1 gunshot and 2 melee attacks, but it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice.
On the opposite end of the spectrum, for somebody who would rather stay away, We have the Way of the Pistolero. Perhaps you're a professional duelist, a pistol-twirling entertainer. You have quick feet and quicker hands, and an equally sharp tongue. So you are going to get your way skill is your choice of deception or intimidation. For your reload, Raconteur's reload, you can interact to reload and then attempt your choice of a deception check to create a diversion or intimidation check to demoralize, probably matching whichever skill you picked with your way skill.
I mean, it could be
the other one.
It could be that you've already used demoralize on all the enemies in that fight, and so now you're just gonna make some distractions.
Yep, either way. Your initial deed. This one is also a free action when you roll an initiative. Reacting to trouble with lightning speed, positioning yourself just right. You gain a +2 circumstance bonus to your initiative roll, and you can interact to draw a one-handed firearm or crossbow. And then as your first action on your first turn, you can step up to 10 feet as a free action.
Nice.
So you can easily reposition yourself, and you're also going to act quickly.
Yep, and their advanced deed, Pistol's Retort, is a reaction when you've got a one-handed firearm or one-handed crossbow. And when a foe in your first range increment is going to critically fail an attack roll against you, you shoot him. So it's really cool if you can get up your AC or just in general, just get them to screw up an attack. Mm-hmm. You just shoot them in the face. Why not?
Yeah, they shouldn't have missed you so much.
There you go. And then for 2 actions, Grim Swagger at level 15 is a really nice one that plays up that whole deception and intimidation to really terrify your enemy. So you've got a gun, and you try to clear the room, and you're just like, do what I say or else. And then you make deception or intimidate against everybody except your allies. And you might just basically say you're going to shoot everybody in the room, and it is going to frighten 2 on a success or frighten 3, and if they're lower level than you, they run away for a round on a critical success, which is quite a lot of frightened to quite a lot of targets. Frighten 2 on a regular success, you're probably going to get a regular success on most opponents.
Yeah.
Even if they're higher level than you might, unless they have a really strong will. And Frighten 2 is some debuff. Plus, you're gonna hit the whole group as long as they're not really far away.
Definitely the guy in the Western walking into the saloon and giving a glare and the whole room clears or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the Way of the Sniper.
Yes.
The way skill is stealth, as you might expect.
For a sniper?
What?
How could it be?
The Slinger's reload for this one, covered reload. You can either take cover or attempt to hide and then interact to reload. Yep. So when you're reloading, you're going to also be able to help defend yourself.
I mean, you know what? Being able to take cover can be fun, and especially if you're playing a lot of snipers use two-handed big weapons because that's kind of their bag, but don't underestimate the ability of the tower shield sniper, because the tower shield sniper can raise a shield, and then they shoot, and then they reload, taking cover behind their tower shield, because you can take cover behind the tower shield once it's up with the reload ability of covered reload, and now. You're only making 1 shot per round with a one-handed weapon. We'll get that out of the way. But you get +4 AC.
Yep.
And other benefits for taking cover, too.
And their initial deed, their free action when they roll stealth for initiative, their first shot is the deadliest. They interact
does extra damage
to draw a firearm or crossbow, and then they do extra precision damage, which scales up as they level up. Their advanced deed at level 9, Vital Shot. Make a ranged 2 actions to make a ranged strike, and if the target is flat-footed, then it deals extra damage, and they take persistent bleed damage.
Yes, and then Ghost Shot, which is a 1 action where if you're hidden from or undetected by the target, you add the precision damage from 1 shot, 1 kill, regardless of if it's your first shot. If you already would get that additional damage, then the effects are not cumulative. If you are undetected or unnoticed by any creatures, you're now hidden from them instead. So it basically means that they know exactly what square you were in, but it doesn't make you if you were undetected or unnoticed and they had no clue what square you were in, it doesn't make you visible. It only downgrades it to hidden. Whereas normally when you shoot someone in the face, you're immediately observed. Wave the Vanguard. I just love getting right in there. They'll do a burst attack and hit themselves with some of the bullet ricochet.
They've got athletics as their way skill, bursting their way right into the front.
They get some strength, carry those big, heavy guns.
Yes. Clear a path, their reload. Wielding a two-handed firearm or two-handed crossbow. Shove them out of the way with the giant weapon. Their initial deed, living fortification when they roll initiative. They could, like a walking tower, interact to draw a firearm or crossbow and then position the weapon defensively.
Yep. Gaining a circumstance bonus to AC of +1 or +2 if the weapon has the parry trait. For your Mithril Tree, I think, is the gun that has the parry trait. Or any other guns that have the parry trait. Your advanced deed, Spinning Crush, is a 3 action when you've got a loaded firearm where you just spin it around and then smash it into everybody, dealing bludgeoning damage to everybody around that does not apply other effects that increase your damage. And if they fail their save, you knock them away.
And last but not least, we have Siegebreaker, their greater deed. If you have a two-handed crossbow or a firearm with a kickback or scatter trait, you charge and smash your weapon into a target, then dig in your heels and pull the trigger. You leap or stride and then strike with the weapon, and it deals an additional 3d8 bludgeoning damage. It ignores 10 points of the target's hardness.
Or their shield hardness
if they're trying to shield block it.
And then afterwards, you do become immobilized, but you gain some additional AC as you kind of stand your ground.
Yes. But it's not just like, oh, I can't move or whatever. Like, if something's trying to move you, they're going to have some trouble.
Yeah. You know what? Dwarves like this one. They probably invented that.
Yes, that does seem like a dwarven invention.
All right, so let's look at the Gunslinger feats, because Gunslinger has a lot of good feats. It has a lot of feats overall. So Blast Lock is one action when you're wielding a loaded firearm or you shoot a lock. I mean, that's pretty good.
Cover fire once per round when you're wielding a loaded firearm or crossbow. You can lay down suppressive fire to protect your allies. And see if the target ducks, then
it gains a circumstance bonus against your attack.
But it also then takes a penalty on its attacks.
Yep. And if it chooses not to duck, you get a bonus on your attack.
Yes, so it gets to choose. Does it want to give you a bonus, or does it want to take a bonus on its AC, but then a penalty on its attacks? Either way, it's going to help you and your team out.
Crossbow Crackshot is for crossbow users. It's very similar to Crossbow Ace on, like, the Ranger, but it's not the same. Dual Weapon Reload is a feat that you can have where you are going to reload a one-handed ranged weapon you're holding, even though you don't have any free hands because you've got 2 guns or a gun and a sword.
Hit the Dirt, reaction. When a creature you can see attempts a ranged strike against you, you can leap and land prone to get a +2 circumstance bonus to your AC against that triggering attack. That's right. Munitions Crafter gives you training crafting, and you get the Alchemist Infused Reagents class feature. Get some alchemical crafting, so if you're a munitions crafter, then you do understand some of that other crafting stuff. Yes, you get a number of reagents, but you can only use them for a limited number of things. Bombs and alchemical ammunition, and your advanced alchemy level is not very high, so you're really going to mostly use it to make basic black powder ammunition and first level bombs. You can get later feats to raise it up. I mean, those are pretty useful. They are. Sword and Pistol is a good one when you make a ranged strike against an enemy within your reach with your one-handed firearm or one-handed crossbow. They're flat-footed against your melee attack because you just shot them in the face. When you hit with a melee strike against an enemy with your one-handed melee weapon, then your next ranged strike you make against them doesn't trigger reactions. Now, this may not require any particular way, but it highly implies a certain one that often gives you free. Drifter. Yes, exactly. At second level, defensive armaments. You have bulky firearms or crossbows you can use to shield your body from your foe's attacks. Any two-handed firearms or two-handed crossbows you wield gain the parry trait. Gee, I wonder who might want to wield two-handed stuff and have the parry trait and jump down and create a fortification whenever they're a siege breaker. But again, anyone can take this, even though it synergizes well.
That's right.
With one in particular.
Fake Out is extremely powerful. It's a reaction that is basically an aid reaction, except you don't have to set it up in advance. So it's extremely powerful, because not setting up aid in advance is, well, it saves you a lot of action. Super, super, super strong. Pistol Twirl.
Yes, if you're trained in deception and you have a loaded one-handed ranged weapon, you can distract your opponent, leaving them vulnerable to follow attacks by feinting them.
Yep. Quick Draw, the classic draw weapon, fire the weapon. Risky Reload. Here's our first one where we're going to risk a misfire. So you reload and then immediately fire for one action. But if you miss, you misfire. Don't miss. I mean, we recently played a Pathfinder Society scenario, and the Gunslinger there used Risky Reload every round and never missed. So it worked out. Warning Shot. Fire a warning shot.
You're trained in Intimidation. You've got a loading firearm. You can fire a warning shot to attempt to demoralize a foe by firing your weapon into the air.
That's right.
And it doesn't matter if they share a language with you, because that's going to be scary no matter what languages they speak.
There's the language of gunfire.
Yes.
Alchemical Shot is a 2-action ability that is going to let you mix alchemical bombs into your shot and change the damage of the strike to deal damage of the bomb and deal some persistent damage to...
Black Powder Boost. You can spend 1 or 2 actions on this one. Firing your weapon as you jump to use the kickback to let you leap farther. I think this is what's being illustrated here.
Yes.
You can either leap with 1 action to get a +10 status bonus of distance travel, or you can spend 2 actions to high jump or long jump instead.
Yes. Pretty handy. Instant backup's a reaction when your firearm misfires to quickly draw a backup weapon and release the misfired weapon if you want. Whoops, that one misfired. I've got another weapon.
Paired shots. If you've got two loaded one-handed firearms / one-handed crossbows, you can shoot them off simultaneously.
Bang.
Using your current multiple attack penalty against the same target, and they combine their damage and add any applicable effects.
Yep, very strong for if you've got the 2 guns. Running Reload is you reload while striding, stepping, or sneaking. A very handy one to mix in for all your sniper needs when you don't want to just take cover because you want to sneak around.
Advanced Shooter, you can either pick firearms or crossbows and gain proficiency with the all advanced weapons of that type as if they were martial of that type.
That's right. Cauterize lets you try to cauterize your wounds with a smoking barrel of a firearm to end persistent bleed damage.
Drifter's Juke, from the Way of the Drifter. If you're wielding a firearm or crossbow in one hand and your other hand is either wielding a melee weapon or is empty. I mean, fist.
Yeah, that's a thing. You can punch them.
You can punch them,
and punch them.
You can move in and out of range to complement your attacks. Step, strike, step, strike. Moving all around. You need to make one of those strikes needs to be a ranged strike with your firearm or crossbow, and the other is with your melee weapon or unarmed attack.
Yep.
And if you don't really want to step, that's fine too. But
yep, it
gives you a lot of flexibility there.
Munitions Machinist lets you get your level -3 for your alchemical ammunition and bombs, which is very, very handy.
If you have the Way of the Vanguard, you might want to pick up Phalanx Breaker. If you've got a 2-handed firearm or crossbow, which you probably do if you got the Way of the Vanguard, you know how to take out an enemy formation by punching a hole through its center. You can make a ranged strike with the weapon against a target within the weapon's first range increment to push them back.
10 feet or 20 on a critical hit. Ho! And if you push them into an obstacle, they take bludgeoning damage equal to half your level. We see a Drifter sample character over there. And there's also Pistolero's Challenge, where you just give out a challenge to your enemy using deception or intimidation against their will DC. No matter the result of the check, that foe is temporarily immune to your Pistolero's Challenge until high noon the next day. And if you succeed, both you and your opponent get a status bonus to damage rolls with strikes made against each other. If you're a master, it increases.
That's not a joke, by the way. The ability literally refreshes at noon.
Yes. I mean, your ability to use it on the same person.
Yes.
Yes. If you critically fail, you become frightened 1 and can't use the ability again for 1 minute because you just completely, your challenge just failed.
Mm-hmm.
Scatter Blast is for a scatter weapon. You can pack it with additional shot and powder to make a risky wave of destruction. And basically, the idea is that its range increment increases, and the radius of its scatter gets real big. But if it misses, you misfire. And if it actually critically fails without that extra misfire thing, it blows up.
I see some comments here. Laser Bear, courtesy of Mikhail Raccoon. Yes, definitely. You might recognize that from a certain Pathfinder Society scenario. Oh, and Kitsune Warlock saying, teleport to a part of the world where it's noon to reset your ability. Best use of a 1,000 gold piece plus scroll ever.
I feel like that since it's reset on the person who's temporarily immune and not you, you'd have to teleport them to a place.
At the point where you teleport them to another place where it's noon,
it's now noon. I get +2 to damaging you.
I feel like by the time you've used that amount of effort, they probably are scared that you have decided to.
Yeah, they probably have. They'd be like, listen, okay, I don't want to be teleported to Goka where it's noon. I'll just hire you, a low-level witch, to use their hex cantrip and give you a +2 to damage if you don't teleport me to Goka. Okay? And we'll agree not to shoot that witch. That will only help you. If you do this, we'll both get a +2 against each other.
Mm-hmm. At any rate.
A fervor witch. Alright, so there's also Sniper's Aim, 2 actions where you take aim and make a ranged weapon strike with a +2 circumstance bonus and ignore their concealment. With kickback, you don't take the normal penalty on the strike for not having the required strength score.
Bullet Split has very specific requirements, but there is a reason for that. You've got a firearm or crossbow in one hand and a slashing or versatile slashing melee weapon in the other. You carefully align your weapon with the edge of your blade so that when you fire the attack, the weapon cuts the blade clean, cuts the bullet / arrow / bolt or whatever clean in 2. You make 2 strikes against 2 separate targets.
That are next to each other.
Each attack takes a -2 penalty to the attack roll because you literally cut your ammunition in half. But hey, they too only count as 1 attack for your multiple attack penalty.
And it's also only 1 action.
Yeah.
Grit and Tenacity is a reaction once per hour. You fail the Fortitude or Will save, and you're like, no, I'm re-rolling at a +2. I have Grit and Tenacity.
Leap and Fire is an upgrade for Hit the Dirt. When you use that Hit the Dirt reaction, you can also make a ranged strike with the loaded firearm or crossbow against the target who triggered your reaction in the first place. Leap to the ground and shoot them, all with a reaction.
Smoke Curtain is a 2-action activity when you're wielding a loaded firearm or wearing or holding a dose of black powder where you load extra powder into your shot to leave a concealing smoke cloud when you shoot.
Stab and Blast, if you have something attached to your weapon that you could stab with, such as a bayonet or reinforced stock, fire lance, or combination weapon, you slice or smash your opponent with the melee portion of your weapon before pulling the trigger at point-blank range.
You basically impale them and then you shoot them. It's really easy to hit with your +2 circumstance bonus. You not only get a +2 on the gun part, you don't apply the multiple attack penalty until after making both attacks.
And it's 1 action.
Yes. So it's actually very powerful, but it's got some limitations of you have to have a very specific kind of weapon. And if the melee strike misses, you don't get to make the ranged strike at all. And it does use a flourish, which some of these do. So it's got some advantages and some disadvantages. And the melee strike isn't your more accurate one. But as long as it can hit, you're going to be in really good shape.
Speaking of flourishes, called Shot, you can target a specific part of your foe's anatomy. And you declare where you're shooting for. And
I choose their elbow.
Yes, exactly. And then based on the body part you target, there is a list, and it sort of says with the GM, yeah, if they don't have tentacles, if they have tentacles and not arms, use arms or whatever's closest. For arms, they become enfeebled 2 until the end of your next turn. And it's the enfeebled 1 and a critical hit. They're also enfeebled 1 for a whole minute. On the head, they're stupefied 2 until the end of your next turn. Critical, they're stupefied 1 for a full minute. Legs, they take a -10-foot status penalty to speeds until the end of your next turn. On a critical hit, they take a -5 status foot penalty to their speeds for 1 minute. Wings, they immediately fall 20 feet or 40 feet on a critical hit.
That's right. So then there's deflecting shot. Trigger, an ally within the first range increment of your firearm or crossbow is hit by an attack, and you can see the attacker. Requirements: loaded firearm or crossbow. The idea is you fire off a shot to deflect the attack, giving the ally +2 to their AC against the triggering attack, after knowing that it's going to be enough to make the attack miss. Now your bullet has been fired, so you probably have to reload, but it's definitely worth it to make the attack miss.
Penetrating fire, blast a bullet through one foe into another. If you have one foe that's granting lesser cover to another foe, you shoot literally through the first opponent to get to the second one.
Yeah.
Make a single range strike that ignores that lesser cover.
Hold on. It says one foe into another in the first one, but it then says choose 2 targets. So also, if your foe is taking a hostage and you're like, I don't want to take the lesser cover from this hostage, you can just shoot through the hostage into the foe.
Or you could not do that. There are
yeah,
other
but they'll never expect that.
There are other choices. I mean, yes, there's nothing in the rules that stops you, I suppose.
Do you really want to give your foe the +1 to AC from the hostage they're taking? That'll teach them to take hostages, Linda.
Okay, Mark. Precious munitions. If you're a munitions mechanist, you can mix flex of precious materials you've gathered on your journey into your custom bullets.
I want to do that.
Make standard grade adamantine, cold iron, or silver ammunition.
Nice. And at 15th level, you can make high grade adamantine, cold iron, or silver ammunition, which was helpful because you probably gonna have a +3 weapon that you need the higher grade ammunition to use. Alright, so then there's rebounding assault. 2 actions. You've got a loaded firearm or loaded crossbow in one hand, a bludgeoning or slashing melee weapon in the other, where you hurl your weapon at an opponent, then fire a bullet into the weapon's hilt to just increase the impact from the thrown weapon and then make it bounce back to you. Like, that's very, very careful shooting, I guess.
Speaking of careful shooting, redirecting shot, a reaction. An ally misses with a range attack that uses a thrown weapon or ammunition. The ally must be willing to accept your assistance. You have to see the attack's target and has to be within the first range increment of your firearm or crossbow, and you have to have a loaded firearm or crossbow. But if all that's true, you see your ally's attack going astray, and you fire your weapon at the projectile to right its course.
Yes, you're helping. Roll a d20 and your ally uses that instead of their own, and the attack ignores bonuses from lesser cover or standard cover because of the redirection. Also, look, it's the simple pistolero, who happens to be Lyrian. Trick shot is a 2 action where you shoot to dislodge an object and like knock a crystal ball off of a table or blow up an explosive barrel or something else like a demonic pustule that's going to explode. It won't always be there, but if it is, it's funny because it blows up. And lastly, at this level is twin shot knockdown, where you have a loaded crossbow or firearm in each hand, and you fire at an enemy while targeting part of its anatomy to disrupt its balance. You make 2 strikes, and if they both hit, the target is knocked prone. Automatically prone.
At 12th level, starts with blood in the air. You can spend an action to take aim on a target that you've damaged with a ranged weapon recently that's trying to hide from you. If they are concealed, then you ignore the concealed condition. And if they are hidden, you reduce that flat check from 11 to 5 to hit them.
Deadeye is a 1 action to relax your eyes to dead eyes, letting you locate invisible creatures until the start of your next turn. Just like, pretty much, you can just see them. It's not like you have to try to find them using Seek. You just see them automatically. You do it.
Flesh Wound is one of those abilities that's like, even when you miss, you still do some damage. So you make a ranged strike, and if it misses, then it still deals 1 die plus any damage from your weapon specialization.
Yep. Ricochet shot bounces your shot off of a nearby surface. It can help you determine cover from a different position than you did before. Shattering shot is a loaded firearm with an alchemical bomb, where you throw a bomb into the air and then shatter the bomb, raining destruction upon all in a 15-foot burst.
If you are a master in stealth, you can pick up shooter's camouflage and decide whether you would rather be good at disappearing into urban terrain or natural terrain. And whichever one you pick, you can hide and sneak in that terrain without cover or being concealed or anything. You're just a master of sneaking.
That's right. Unshakable Grit is the upgrade to Grit and Tenacity, where you're so hardened by everything around you that if you get a success on the reroll from Grit and Tenacity, if that's what you roll, you get a critical success instead. And if you got a critical failure on that reroll, you get a failure instead. So you're always going to be pretty well off from that Unshakable Grit reroll.
Then we make it to 14th level. For the Way of the Vanguard Blast Tackle, you've got your two-handed crossbow or kickback or scatter firearm that you've got for a lot of your other type of stuff. You throw yourself at an enemy and you attempt to grapple them. If you're wielding your weapon, you're going to just release a hand to do so. If your grapple succeeds, you can immediately strike them with the weapon. Even if it's a two-handed weapon, you
do it anyway.
You do it anyway. You're grabbing them, you're striking them, and the strike hits extra hard.
Yep. You just kind of like tackle them and then fire your gun into them.
And as long as you've got them grabbed, you only need one hand to reload that and strike that, weapon and strike that person that you've got.
You're using them as sort of leverage to just fire the gun into their chest multiple times.
Yes.
Come at Me is an upgrade of Pistol Arrows challenge where there's no longer a limit to the number of challenges you can have in effect at one time. You can just challenge everybody. Dance of Thunder is a once per minute. When you're not fatigued, you spend 3 actions on this, and you're going to step, then you're going to strike, then you're going to reload. And if you hit, you can keep doing that up to 3 total times for a total of 9 actions. If you never miss, you can, or only miss on the third one. And then you become fatigued for a minute.
Because that was a lot that you just did there.
And you can only use it once per minute, and you can't use it if you're fatigued.
If you have the Way of the Drifter, you can take Disruptive Blur, creating cacophonous blasts from your guns or distracting shots from your crossbow to create diversions. After you make a strike with a firearm or crossbow, creatures can't take any reactions that would be triggered by your movement for the rest of your turn.
That's right. There's also a Sample Sniper over there for if you like to snipe. Plus, speaking of snipers, Headshot. Way of the Sniper 2
Headshot
action.
the rod?
I mean, you could headshot the rod. You can headshot whoever you want. Because you're going to make a crossbow or firearm strike. If you damage the target within the last minute with the same weapon and get a critical success on your attack roll, they must succeed at a fortitude save against their class DC or die. A death and incapacitation effect. If they survive, they're temporarily immune for 1 day. If they have no head, then they're fine. Creatures with extra heads might survive losing one of their heads. Showstopper is a pistol twirl upgrade with Masters of Deception, where you're gonna pistol twirl to feint and target all enemies within the first range increment with your feint.
2-weapon fusillade. If you've got 2 weapons and one of them is a loaded firearm or loaded crossbow, 1 action to attack with both weapons, strike twice.
That's right. Very, very handy little flourish if you want to make 2 attacks. 16th level. Fatal Bullet. You're so talented that you deal an additional die of the appropriate size and damage type for the Fatal trait when you're doing your critical hits after doubling, of course, just like everything with Fatal.
Hair Trigger, if you got one of those initial deeds that allows you to interact to draw your weapon, which we just saw a bunch of those, no one can react faster than you pull the trigger. Instead of interacting to draw the weapon, you can strike with a firearm or crossbow that you're already wielding, and if the strike hits, the target is also flat-footed until the end of your first turn of the encounter. Right. Because what? How did you do that?
Also, keep in mind, if it's a crappy enough fight against, like, a peasant, you could potentially kill them during initiative before anybody takes a turn. It's like, says 16th level Gunslinger with Hair Trigger. I appreciate that you've created some kind of a pick fighter build that is guaranteed to win against lower level opponents on turn 1. That's kind of cute. I win during the rolling of initiative against those lower level opponents. So you cannot beat that pick fighter. And the pick fighter says, "Brat my DPR." Alright, so Instant Return is a reaction when an enemy misses you with a ranged attack. Using a type of ammunition that your weapon could use, and you've got an unloaded firearm or crossbow, you quickly, in midair, load the ammunition into your firearm and then shoot them.
Thank you for the delivery, but I must return the favor.
Yes. And then your opponent says, that's unrealistic. And you say, what's unrealistic? The fact that I can reload with something in midair? No, the fact that you actually fought something that used the same kind of ammunition that you did. Nobody's going to use that kind of ammunition in your campaigns. It's like, but I'm playing Outlaws of Alkenstar. Oh, okay, fine.
Fair enough. Ricochet Master.
It's an upgraded ricochet shot.
Yeah, upgrade ricochet shot. That lets you bounce your weapon your bullet off up to 2 solid surfaces instead of 1. And if a creature is flat-footed the first time you use ricochet shot against
no one believes that you're gonna bounce it off 2 things and then still hit them until you do. 18th level, final shot. It does not necessarily actually the final shot, but it does cause some issues to you that make it kind of a final shot. 3 actions, and then you're just gonna be like, all right, I'm gonna reload. I'm going to put 3 doses of black powder in here in addition to the normal amounts. Then shoot off in the first range increment.
This seems like something that could break your weapon if it fails.
On a success, you get a critical success. But on a failure, you misfire. And regardless, you're flat-footed until the start of your next turn and it's immediately stunned 1.
I mean, you just created a giant explosion in your own face, so, like, that makes sense.
Yep.
What about piercing critical, though? If
19
you have firearm or crossbow with which your legendary proficiency, then 19 that hit are critical successes, not just 20.
That's right.
You've also got the 18th level feat Unerring Shot. You can place your shot exactly where you intend to aim it. When attacking with a ranged weapon that you have master or greater proficiency, ignore the range increment. It's still got a maximum range, but like it's just as easy to shoot someone who's 5 feet away as someone who's at the very end of the range of the weapon.
That's right. Why not?
If the target has cover or lesser cover, then they don't gain the bonus to AC. It's basically like a lesser cover doesn't get bonus.
It decreases the cover by 1.
I see. So lesser is to none, standard is to lesser, greater is to
Reach
standard.
for the stars. You can black powder boost over and over again to add more 10 feet of height or distance to your leap to a maximum of 5 boosts for a plus 50. That's a lot. Yeah, so you jump super, super high.
Level 20, Perfect Readiness. You're ready to fire with an instinctive speed and muscle memory. You are permanently quickened, that you can have another action that you can use to step or interact to reload.
That's right. And Ricochet Legend is a Ricochet Master upgrade where you can now bounce off of any surface 3 times, and creatures must make a will save against your class DC or become stunned and unable to determine where the shot originated because, wait, how many, they're guns and they're bullets. And then Slinger's Reflex is a level 20, where at the end of start of each enemy's turn, you get an additional reaction you can use on only that turn to use a Gunslinger reaction, which hopefully you've found a way that you have a set of reactions that don't all fire off your gun and leave you with the gun unloaded. Yes. Maybe one of them is to take the other people's things into your unloaded gun and shoot them.
Yes.
So that's a lot of really good stuff here. Now, there's a secret hidden way that is later in the chapter, but that is not part of the initial class, so we'll do it when we're doing the regular stuff. But what we are going to do is multi-class. We always do, except for Inventor. We usually do multi-class.
Yes. So, as it says here, Gunslinger archetype is a great fit for dexterous characters who want a weapon that hits hard from a distance.
That's right.
Especially rangers and rogues who already have abilities that can make their first hit count.
Spellcasters with True Strike might favor firearms with the Fatal property, and Gunslinger abilities that improve options for supporting their allies.
So what does this Gunslinger dedication do?
Guns!
Guns! So
you get trained in simple and martial firearms.
Yes, you pick a Gunslinger way and become trained in that way's associated skill.
You don't get anything else from that. You can also get basic and advanced shooting. They're the typical get some feats.
Slinger's Readiness to get the initial deed for the way you selected for your dedication at level 6.
At level 10, you can get the Slinger's Reload. That's pretty handy to be able to get Slinger's Reload, too.
And at level 12, you have 2 options. Eagle Eye to get that Master in Perception if you're already an expert, and Firearm Expert to become an expert with your chosen weapons.
That's right. So that's the Gunslinger archetype in a nutshell. Now, what archetypes work well for someone who's a gunslinger already? Well, you've got an action economy that is loaded up with powerful multi-action flourishes and other actions that combine actions into more actions in the Gunslinger class. So you're going to be looking for an archetype that does not rely on using too many of your actions, because then your action-dense, action-efficient Gunslinger actions don't get to be used as much. So
actions.
Yes. So if you wound up needing something that uses a bunch of your actions for the archetype, like, I don't know, doing medicine all the time on a medic, or being a beastmaster and commanding your animal companion, that's not always going to necessarily jive super well with Gunslinger, though there are certain builds that can get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to look for things that give you passive benefits that you can pick up, or otherwise that give you a situational advantage that you can use in situations where you wouldn't want to do your regular routine with Gunslinger. So maybe Medic does work because you use it for healing. But that Beastmaster maybe doesn't work as easily because you want to use that every turn as part of your routine, and your Gunslinger high action economy options are competing against it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where you got with Gunslinger in terms of dedications. And I think that is roughly where we're at. So let's say goodbye to YouTube and do our outro. Bye, YouTube!
Bye!